Hello true believers. It has been quite a while since I have uploaded a video on this channel. The reason was that after a couple of years of saving money, bending over for horny old men, selling one of my livers and just recently robbing a bank, I was finally able to make a transition from a PC user to a Mac user. Unfortunately, producing videos is not as easy for me on the Mac as it was on the PC, or at least when you don't have the experience. But Sentry's recent return motivated me to hire a cheap ass video editor from a third world country and have him edit this video for me while I was watching My Little Pony porn. Speaking of the Sentry, our golden red golden black golden boy is finally back. After 1 year of absence in deep space, also known as character limbo, also known as Marvel rather puts their time and money into trash characters barely any serious comic book reader cares about. I wonder if this is an ironic lack of self-awareness with me being one of the 7 Sentry fans on the planet. Anyway, the Sentry has made his glorious and long-awaited return in the pages of Black Panther and the Agents of Wakanda Forever. I don't read comics much these days, so from what I think to know, S.H.I.E.L.D. is not a thing anymore, and now the Marvel Universe needs a new group of overly protective girlfriends to look out for the little guy. Black Panther and his diverse team have taken on that task. One of their first missions leads them to a small town in Oklahoma, which is the same state in which Asgard appeared many blue moons ago, before it was destroyed by a voided out Sentry. Black Panther and his teammates are led to the city by a reading of intense energy. When they arrive, everything seems peaceful. Way too peaceful, as Black Panther points out. No people, no animals, no drunk beggars inside trains asking you for money, where you have a much harder time ignoring them. If you are watching this, Ali, fuck you and your ex-girlfriend, who threw you out of the apartment. Get a job and you'll have enough money to buy yourself some food. Food in quotation marks. The Agents of Wakanda Forever realize that the spirit energies are twisted in the city, and that something is trying to mask its presence. And the truth lies behind an energy shield. The agents pass through the shield, only to find themselves in a twisted world with red lightning and shadowy monsters, which are attacking the citizens. It is already here, where a Sentry fan can see the resemblance between these creatures and the void spawns we saw in the first issue of the last Sentry mini-series, which I have reviewed in depth on this channel. It was fucking amazing. If you haven't read it, then I must ask you what you're doing with your life. Read it. It's worth it. Trust me. You don't know who I am, and you shouldn't leave me alone with your fridge or your wallet or your wife, but I encourage you to still trust me and read the book. The agents engage the creatures and start pushing them away from the citizens. They realize that the creatures are fighting as one, and that there must be a source. Janet Van Wasp is the quickest, so she goes to look for the source. Unfortunately for her, she is quickly taken care of, and we see that these creatures are not only physical in nature, but that they also start invading the minds of the Agents of Wakanda Forever. The creatures separate the agents to take care of them individually, while talking down to them and trying to discourage them from fighting, trying, even living. The creatures shapeshift, trick, and exploit, but don't manage to finish off Fat Cobra for good, who slowly but surely continues to fight his way to the source of the chaos and madness. He reaches the source, and we finally see the Sentry, hovering in the air and meditating. And that's the cliffhanger of the first issue. This hits us with a couple of questions. Where has the Sentry been all this time? Why is he back now? Why is he back in Oklahoma, the same state in which he had killed gods and destroyed Asgard a couple of years ago? What hair product does he use to keep his hair that shiny and wavy? And most importantly, is he friend or foe? Let's take a look at the next issue to maybe have some of those questions answered. The introduction of the second issue reminds us of the events we have seen in the last issue. It mentions the dangerous creatures which attacked the Agents of Wakanda Forever, and the cliffhanger of the last issue, the incredibly powerful reality warper called the Sentry, who is currently merged with his dark side known as the Void. Before we get to the Sentry, we first see what the other agents are going through. Sentry's mind tricks send each of them into their own personal hell. The agents are insulted, ridiculed, and belittled by Sentry's negativity, yet all of them manage to fight the mental assault back. This is where you should already see that something is a little bit off with the Sentry. Wasp for example mentions that her Avengers mind shield training kicked back in and allowed her to break free, where in the past she never stood a chance against Sentry's mind assaults. No one ever really did. That tells us that Sentry is not trying to actually harm them and that there is more to his story. We finally get to see the Sentry, who is being challenged by Fat Cobra, who wants the madness to stop. Sentry doesn't recognize Fat Cobra and asks him who he is. Here is where we also see that Sentry's speech bubbles are distorted. Something is off about him. Fat Cobra confirms that as well. He can feel that Sentry's energy is messed up and that his presence is causing reality to go berserk. Sentry doesn't believe that to be true. He thinks that he is better now after he has accepted the darkness within him. He quickly dispatches of Fat Cobra and drags him into an illusion, which Fat Cobra fights out of. Meanwhile the other agents are trying to approach the Sentry, who is just standing there and looking like a million exploding bucks. They can't breach the winds he is creating. He still believes everything to be fine. The agents notice that the Sentry doesn't fully comprehend the chaos he is causing, while Fat Cobra points out that the negativity in the Sentry is growing and that it must be purged, otherwise they all die. The agents of Wakanda Forever have no other choice but to call for help from the heavens, and they receive that help in the form of Thor, who comes flying in from above and attacks the Sentry in a similar fashion he attacked him during the pages of Uncanny Avengers, where the Sentry had the death seed inside him. Who else wants Sentry seed inside them? But Sentry answers in a similar fashion he answered in Uncanny Avengers, by returning the favor and smacking Thor away. The other agents of Wakanda attack the Sentry as well. Here is where I saw some people question their effectiveness against the Sentry. Don't be silly, you dense motherfuckers. We all know that the Sentry could kill everyone except Thor with a thunderclap. The writer knows that as well. But that's not how you write comic books. The majority of people who buys this particular comic book buys it because they've gotten into Black Panther as a character and want to see him and his teammate do some cool shit. It's actually quite remarkable that Marvel had that team call for help against the Sentry. And how could they not? Even the dialogue points out multiple times that they are just keeping the Sentry off balance, annoying him, distracting him. Sentry doesn't make a single noise when trading shots with Thor, but Black Panther kicking him or Okoye grabbing him from behind. If you ask me, he is being more annoyed than anything else. On top of that, it is clear that they're fighting an uphill battle and that their lives are at stakes. Even Thor admits that they don't have much time left and that they need a solution to stop the Sentry. And while they're distracting the Sentry and pushing him around like a bunch of bullies pushing around a little nerdy bitch who will grow up to be Bill Gates and have enough money to buy the lives of his bullies and the lives of their children and their children's children, Fat Cobra is preparing for an attack. Fat Cobra launches at the Sentry and performs a weird ass jutsu attack, which extracts the little bit of negative energy which was affecting the Sentry and eats it. This is again something where some people didn't quite get the point. Fat Cobra did not eat the actual void. Wait, I just realized that I haven't made a single fat joke about Fat Cobra. Would that be politically incorrect? Man, fuck your politics. When Fat Cobra looks at you, his many double chins make it look like as if he is staring at you over a pile of pancakes. Fat Cobra is naked all the time because at the laundry shop no one wants to wash his clothes since they don't wash curtains. Moving on. With the little bit of the negative energy extracted from the Sentry, his speech bubbles return to normal instead of being distorted. That again tells us that he was in a very questionable state of mind. And that's something the writer confirmed on Twitter as well. We have also known for a while that Sentry will be back. Not written by Jim Zub anymore though, who introduced him back in these 2 issues. And I liked these 2 issues. You have to keep in mind that these 2 issues were not about putting the spotlight on the Sentry. Sentry was used to make a return, which sets up his future and more importantly, his powers were used to put the spotlight on the agents of Wakanda Forever. Thanks to Sentry's mind tricks we found out more about Wasp's, Okoye's and Fat Cobra's fears and self-doubts. And it looks like Okoye is bothered more by her inner demons than the other 2 agents are. Black Panther was largely protected from the negative energy by his suit, which was absorbing it. It should also be pointed out again that Fat Cobra didn't eat the full void. That would be ridiculous. What Fat Cobra did was eating a small fraction of Sentry's negativity, which was messing with his mind, and in process warping the reality around him, changing the weather, creating monsters and invading minds. The next time we see the Sentry he will probably be more in control. I can't wait for it, and depending on if there is enough to talk about, I will make another video. Until then, have a nice day, and as always, stay vigilant.